What happened, but it was it's a great moment and a win that we needed.
Over 2 years since your last goal, so this must be feeling very, very special, particularly after last week as well.
Yeah, it's been too long. I can't even remember the last time I scored, to be honest.
Manchester City have kept the pressure on Premier League leaders Liverpool with a win at Huddersfield. They won 3-0 at the John Smith Stadium. Fullback Danilo's deflected strike opening the scoring after 18 minutes. 9 minutes into the second half, it was 2-0. Leroy Sané's cross headed in by Raheem Sterling. The flag staying down. And 2 minutes later, they got their third. Man of the match, Sané, completing the scoring. It means City return to within 4 points of leaders Liverpool with 15 games to go.
I would prefer to win the Liverpool position. Only we can do is win our games. So what should I say? So we win our game, so we improve. So now we have to analyse what we have done in our game, so to improve.
Former Manchester United midfielder Paul Scholes has held talks about becoming the new manager of League Two side Oldham. We understand that he's the front-runner to take over from interim boss Pete Wild. Oldham are expected to decide on a new manager tomorrow. Scholes missed out on becoming their boss 15 months ago. Hearts have drawn semi-pro side Auchinleck Talbot in the fifth round of the Scottish FA Cup. Hearts got there by beating Livingston 1-0 today. Stephen Naismith laying the ball off for Sean Clare to score. Holders Celtic face St Johnstone, Rangers visit Kilmarnock and Inverness travel to Ross County. Now, there's been a major shock at the Australian Open where defending men's champion Roger Federer is out. He was beaten by Stefanos Tsitsipas in the fourth round. The six-time champion serving here saved 3 set points to win the opening set on a tie-break. He'd only lost twice in 89 matches in Melbourne and he'd taken the first set. However, the second set also went the distance. The young Greek 14th seed saving 4 set points before winning another tie-break. That levelled the match. Tsitsipas took the third set 7-5 and before the fourth set went to yet another tie-break. Federer would not give up. But the 20-year-old held his nerve. He saw out the tiebreak to claim the biggest win of his career and reach his first Grand Slam quarter-final. He'll play Andy Murray's conqueror, Roberto Bautista Agut, next. The world number 2, Rafael Nadal, in the orange here, is through to the last 8. He, the 17-time Grand Slam champion, beat Thomas Berdych in 3 sets to reach his 37th Grand Slam quarter-finals. Wimbledon champion Angelique Kerber has been knocked out by world number 35, Danielle Collins. The world number 2 at the top of your screen was beaten 6-love, 6-2 in a match lasting only 56 minutes. Collins will play Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova in the quarter-finals, and she beat Sloane Stephens. Hometown favourite Ashley Barty at the top of your screen is through to the quarter-finals of a major for the first time in her career. The 22-year-old came from a set down to beat former champion Maria Sharapova 4-6, 6-1, 6-4, and she'll play Petra Kvitova next. Leinster have got themselves a home quarter-final against Ulster in rugby's European Champions Cup. The defending champions won by 37 points to 19 against Wasps to make sure of a home last 8 match. Gary Ringrose got their opening try. Leicester were 20-0 ahead when Wasps got their first points. England number 8, Nathan Hughes, there crashing over. The Irish side extended their lead again, though, when Sean Cronin got his second try of the afternoon. He was in the middle of this driving maul. Wasps unable to stop the Leinster forwards from going over. You just have to take our word for that one. Wasps got 2 more tries thanks to Dan Robson and Marcus Watson, but Leinster sealed their bonus point win with the best try of the game. Noel Reid finishing off that move. They win Pool 1 with 5 wins out of 6. French side Toulouse are also into the quarter-finals as one of the best runners-up. They held on to beat Bath 2017. Antoine Dupont capitalising on a loose ball to put Toulouse 17-3 up before half-time. But Bath fought back in the second half. This time the loose ball bounced their way. Samisa Rokoduguni scoring the try. And when Zach Mercer scored with 5 minutes to go, the lead was only 3 points. But Toulouse held on to reach the last 8, and they will play Racing 92. 40-year-old boxer Manny Pacquiao continues to roll back the years. He beat Adrian Broner, a man 11 years his junior, to retain his welterweight world title in Las Vegas. Pacquiao won by a unanimous decision, keeping the WBA belt in his 70th professional fight. A big year for England's cricketers starts on Wednesday. 2019 brings a home Ashes series and a home World Cup. But bowler James Anderson is fully focused on the tour of the West Indies, a tour that brings back some fond memories.
Yeah, we've not won a series since then, but for me, going past Beefy's record in Antigua was a really special week.
Got him! That's what England have been waiting for. That's what Jimmy Anderson has been waiting for. He now becomes England's leading wicket taker of all time in Test matches.
I've never set myself goals. I literally just try and get myself fit and prepared for the next game. I feel like if I look too far ahead, then I sort of take my focus off what I need to be doing now. You know, it is a huge year for us, World Cup and Ashes in England, which is going to be huge. But I think that's something that we would rather focus on when that time comes, rather than taking our focus off what is an important tour here.
By the end of tonight, we'll know which 2 teams will appear in this year's NFL showpiece, the Super Bowl. Both conference finals are live on Sky Sports USA later, and Kansas versus New England Patriots could be a thriller and a chiller. These were the scenes last week before a recent cold snap. Temperatures for the AFC Championship game could be as low as -20 Celsius. The coldest NFL game was in 1967, though. The Green Bay Packers played the Dallas Cowboys in -25. That was said to have gone to -40 with wind chill. There's more Premier League reaction now on Sky Sports News. We're back with Sportsline at 8:30.
For life insurance that rewards healthy living, Vitality.
Well, time now to have a look at the weather.
By the springtime flowers of a mountain lake, to the first snowfall on a winter's day.
Southeastern parts fine tomorrow, but strong winds, rain and hill snow will move across the north and the west. Before that, it's going to be mainly dry this evening, but central Britain will see a little bit of rain. There'll be a few coastal showers too. Wales and central England will see some patchy drizzle and hill fog tonight, but cloudy skies will keep it largely frost-free. Elsewhere, most places will be dry with long clear spells leading to a patchy frost, but northwest Scotland will see some blustery showers. It's going to be mainly dry on Monday morning, but fairly cloudy too, with a scattering of showers near northern coasts, more general rain and strong winds in the northwest.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Stay with us after the break here on Sky News. It's Brexit, deal or no deal. We will be live in Leeds for our special programme. Do stay with us to hear the views of a city that was hugely divided over the referendum back in 2016.
Good evening and welcome to Leeds University, to the Pyramid Canteen for a special programme looking at possible ways forward for Brexit. Tomorrow, Theresa May will take her Plan B to the Houses of Parliament. But this here tonight, mercifully, is a politician-free zone. We have some good people from this region who can come up with some ideas and suggestions. We're in Leeds because in the 2016 referendum, it's one of the most evenly split cities in the UK. And tonight we're going to be discussing the issues with local people, half of whom voted Remain, half of whom voted to leave, a big variety of ages, jobs. We're also going to be conducting a series of votes among the audience and comparing them with a national poll carried out by Sky News. Let's see if we can come up with any ideas to send to Westminster. It's Brexit crisis, deal or no deal. But before we get going, let's assess how this city has dealt with the ongoing paralysis that's bedevilled our exit from the EU. Sky's North of England correspondent Gerard Tubb has been out and about.
The start of a new day in Leeds. A city split 50-50 in the referendum, collectively unsure if Brexit would be a new dawn or a harsh awakening. Leeds is a city of wealth. With a £21 billion economy, it has 10,000 people working in digital companies. It's also a city of disadvantage, with almost 1 in 3 of its school children living in some of the most deprived areas of the country. In one of them, a delivery of Italian tiles is being unloaded. This firm spends £1 million a year on European imports and employs 18 people. One of them told me she wants a second referendum and thinks this time more people would vote Remain. What do you worry about if we do leave now?
Well, jobs mainly, jobs, income, everything that'll be affected trade-wise. Obviously living standards, food, everything's going to be affected, especially for obviously ordinary working people. So it's just a worry overall.
There's less of a sense of worry in this busy city centre hair studio. A cut and blow dry here is £34. But they despair that there's nothing cut and dried about Brexit.
You think what when you think of Brexit?
I think confusion, and I think that the public were misled. I think that
Verity is 31, married to an IT worker with a toddler's future to think of. She doesn't want another referendum, but if there is one, she'll vote.
And you'd still vote Leave?
I think I would have to do some research. I don't feel like I'm...
So you're a waverer?
Yes, at the moment.
The salon's co-owner, meanwhile, is just baffled.
I really don't understand it, and I feel extremely sorry for Theresa May. I really, really do.
She thinks we should just get on with the decision to leave. But if there were a second referendum?
I feel I would still vote the same way, but I'm very worried about the backlash that's gone on. So that makes me think, I really don't know.
So you're just confused, really?
I'm extremely confused.
Back at Tiles and Mosaics, they feel their European suppliers will work with them to keep their business. But the Remainers here are as baffled as the Leavers about what happens next.
As a business, we're happy to move on and positive about moving on, but to what? We don't know. And the most worrying thing is the politicians don't seem to know either, so what do we do?
Brexit will be the end of a chapter, for good or ill. 2.5 years after the referendum, people here seem to be less certain than ever which it will be. Gerard Tubb, Sky News, Leeds.
Well, also tonight we have a Brexit expert in the house, a Bregspert, if you like. This is Professor Anon Menon. Now, he's a professor at King's College of European Politics, and he's also a director of UK in a Changing Europe. Now, the whole point of you being here is if anyone has any factual questions, isn't it? So, if someone wants to know what WTO rules are or what the backstop is, You're going to be able to help us.
I shall do my level best.
I'm very glad we've got you here. So let's bring in our first topic, and it's the question we'll be asking our audience in a few minutes. And the question is, should the UK leave the European Union at the end of March without a deal? That's the so-called no-deal scenario. Let's move over to this side of the room first of all. Let's talk to Stephen. Stephen, you're the director of an import business. You voted leave.
I did.
But it could affect your company. Are you still happy that you voted, and are you still thinking that a no deal is the right thing?
More adamant than ever.
Why is that?
I suppose what you're really asking is almost a sociological problem, but I think it reflects something much deeper than that. And I think it reflects the crisis that's been created by the political class. They fail to understand that ordinary people, and I class myself as one of those, ordinary people can take the step beyond narrow, selfish, economic things that, yes, affect all our lives, but can look to a bigger purpose. Most people did that when they voted in the referendum. And the political class, I do hope they're listening, they need to understand that this is such an important situation. We are capable of looking at bigger issues, and the issues for me are not about me, my business, my family. Because it could affect your business negatively. It will affect my family. There's 4 family members. We've built it over 20 years. We import it completely from the EU. But there's more important issues, and it's not just about me. It's about sovereignty and democracy, and it's the last word that is the real issue now. We've got a political class that are refusing to listen to a democratic majoritarian vote. The vote was taken. We instructed them. They should obey our wishes, because if they don't, we haven't got an economic crisis. We haven't got a political crisis. We've got a democratic crisis in this country, and that should concern not just me as a leaver, it should concern those that abstained. It should concern all remainders, because if we don't have in this country majoritarian democracy, we must, all of us, ask ourselves, what do we have?
Okay. First point, and a good one. Ian, you're sitting behind Stephen. From the opposite camp, you're a Remainer. Yes. You know, this is a man behind you who could be affected very economically about his decision, but he still had the guts to go ahead and vote the way he chose. What are your concerns about the economic impact?
I'm quite concerned about a no-deal Brexit. I think from what's coming across in the press, that we could have a fairly dramatic downturn in the economy, and I don't think that will be good for jobs and for people at large. However, I do agree with Stephen in that I do think that we've voted to leave, and I think we do need to be very careful about how we respond to that mandate that the government and the people have given.
So as a Remainer, you're happy to respect the referendum result?
I'm happy to respect it. I would prefer not to be respecting it. I would prefer to stay in. But yes, I would actually say respect it. I think one of the things that the government, I think, need to do, and politicians need to do in particular, is they need to look at the different scenarios in terms of how we do a Brexit.
Well, and the whole point of this first section of this programme is asking that question. What if we go for a no deal? Crash out, as some people have described it. Matt, next to you, you're a lorry driver. Yes. How would a no deal affect you, your job, your family?
I work quite close to the construction industry, and a lot of the projects are funded by EU subsidies and that kind of thing. So, obviously, from a purely selfish point of view, if the work dries up, then it's going to affect me and my family. Standard of living as well, products on the shelves being more expensive. Yeah.
And you've also got family in Europe, haven't you?
We have, yes.
What impact do you think it could have there, do you fear?
Well, they are part of the expatriate community, so they would have to pay extra tariffs to come back and visit the country that they're actually from. I don't think that's right at all. So.
OK, let's move on to the next table. That was the thoughts of a couple of Remainers. Craig, over here, Matt there, lorry driver, talking about the construction industry. You're actually a joiner. What impact are you finding? And are you still happy that if we went out on a no deal?
I'm totally happy to go out on a no deal. I think there's just been so much scaremongering in everything that's been said. End of the day, nobody has got any idea of what's going to happen. The main thing that's been brought up, I feel, and I think a lot of people in this room do, is that this is no longer a debate about leave, stay, referendum. This is a debate about democracy. We voted to leave. If it doesn't happen, we have no democracy.
But the question in this part is, what if it is a no deal? I mean, I know you want it to happen, but if it was no deal, if it was extending the deal, the different options that are out there, you'd be happy with no deal? You'd go with it?
Definitely. Happy with no deal.
OK. Good for you. Let's move over to this side of the room. Let's talk to Natalie. Natalie, what are your feelings about no deal?
Well, I'm terrified about the idea of a no deal. I think it's the worst possible thing that could happen.
We heard, sorry, just there about scaremongering. I mean, do you think you have been swayed by some of the fearful stories you've heard?
Well, the only economist that actually thinks that Brexit's a good idea says that it will destroy our car industry if we have a no-deal Brexit. So how is that a good thing? All those jobs are going to go. That's not project fear, that is project fact. And I think, unfortunately, what's happened with this debate is somebody said that we don't want to have experts, but we do need to listen to people that have studied and know what actually is going to happen. I mean, the Bank of England were derided for saying that they had scenarios, but they actually worked to make sure that after we had the referendum result that the economy didn't go down. So I do think that we do need to listen to experts and that we do need to accept that trading on WTO rules, which no other country in the world trades on just WTO rules, is a disaster, and we need to do everything we can to avoid that.
Well, we're sitting next to Anand, our expert. Just give us a basic précis, very briefly. What are WTO rules?
Well, WTO is the global trading organisation. There's about 160 odd states are a member of it, and it sets basic bottom lines for trade. Tries to free up global trade, set minimum standards. The point is right that there is no major country that trades entirely on WTO rules. WTO rules let you go and sign trade deals with your closest partners, but it's a baseline, if you like, the WTO.
And economically, what Natalie was saying there about none of the experts saying that it's going to be an economically good thing, or only one economist saying that. I mean, is there a consensus among the economic community about whether no deal would be catastrophic or whether it would be copable?
Well, there's two separate things. No deal is different to WTO terms. No deal means we leave the European Union having signed no withdrawal agreement. So none of the loose ends of our membership are tied up. So, for instance, gentleman over there was talking about having family in Europe. If we leave the European Union with no deal, they fall into a legal limbo because there is no legal structure that gives them rights. There is no provision for Brits in German law. There's a provision for EU citizens. If we leave with no deal, they're in a funny legal vacuum.
So if we leave with no deal, we'd still have to negotiate joining the WTO rules, etc.
We'll still be in the WTO, but what will happen with no deal is the infrastructure of the laws that govern our interactions with Europe will cease to exist. That will be disruptive. Now, if, like the gentleman over there, your prime concern is sovereignty and not economics, then that's a whole different debate. But there's no doubt that in the short term, at least, losing those rules is going to disrupt our economy.
OK. Right. Fingers on your buzzer time. Let's have our first vote of the night. Using your handsets, can you answer the following question? Should the UK leave the European Union without a deal? Please press 1 for yes, 2 for no. Coming up, we're going to have the results of this audience vote and also the results of a National Sky data poll on the same question, coming up in a few moments. Welcome back to the Student Union at Leeds University, where we're discussing some of the thorniest issues surrounding the UK's departure from the EU and what solutions we could maybe come up with away from Westminster. In a moment, we're going to be introducing our next topic for discussion, but first, let's bring you the results of our audience and also the national poll. So just before the break, we asked the people here if the UK should leave the EU with no deal, and this is what you guys said. 54% of you said yes, we should leave with no deal. 46% of you said no. Let's compare that with the results of a much larger national Sky Data poll carried out on Friday, and the results exactly the same. 46%, oh sorry, exactly the same, but in the other way around. 46% said yes, 54% said no. So slightly skewed more in favour of a no deal here than nationally, but it is still jolly close. It is still almost 50-50 for so many people. Right, let's move on to our second topic of the night. This time we're asking, should the UK delay leaving the EU to either prepare for a no-deal Brexit or negotiate a new deal? In other words, whatever happens, should the whole process be delayed? I'm going to start with Sarah over here. Sarah, you're an office manager. Why do you not think we should extend? Why is that not a great idea?
Because they've had 2 years and they're not getting anywhere now. It's just going to be endless squabbling. An end needs drawing to it. We need an end date where we just say, we can't sort this out. We can't come to a deal that we can all agree on. Parliament are nowhere near. If I thought they were anywhere near, I might say, yeah, have another 3 months and see if you can just get it that little bit. But what Theresa May comes up with tomorrow, they're going to knock back. It probably won't be any good because she's not going to have got enough concessions to please everyone. And it's just endless. We just need an end point and just say, look, that's it.
So, yeah, little flutter of support for you here. But what about the economic consequences? Are you worried about that?
I anticipated when I voted leave, when we actually had the leave vote, that the economic consequences would be more dramatic than they have been, and probably, you know, a lot more would have gone on. Very little really seems to have happened. Not a great deal. That's, you know, we were told that we'd plunge back into recession, there'd be a big housing market crash. None of those things have happened. But I did anticipate some financial sort of difficulties as a result of the leave vote, and you know, to me, it's worth it. It's
similar pictures to what we heard on the other league table.
And I do think that, you know, at the end of the day, people will adapt and overcome. That's what they do. You know, I will still get up and go to work on the 30th of March. Everyone in this room will do exactly what they were going to do. Individual motivation won't change. So we'll just carry on.
Well, let's get a Remainer's point of view. Let's move over to the guys up here on the stage. Esther, you voted Remain. What do you think about the prospect of extending it? Do you think that, you know, Sarah there said she just doesn't think that the talks are going to come to anything, so there's no point. Do you think there is a point?
Well, I would say they should extend it because voting in the first place, people didn't actually have the facts. It was just more of what people heard. And for me, when I heard about Brexit, it was just more about the immigration problems. That was what most people focused on. So now that information is clearer, I think if you have more time, then they could come up with a deal that is good. And for me, I don't really know what the deal is. If they can actually tell us exactly what Theresa May's deal is, probably people will understand better and stop making assumptions. So if there's a little bit of time, then it might help.
So more information, more time and more information. Robert, you're nodding.
Yes.
Next.
That we don't need to have no deal. We don't need for that to happen. So the European Union wants to work with us. If we turn around and say, no, we want to leave with no deal, we're damaging a relationship with 27 other countries who've done nothing wrong. They want to work with us. They want to make Brexit a success in a way. If we want to leave, thank you. And I think that why alienate ourselves? You know, we can work with the European Union to actually create a deal. Fair enough, Theresa May's deal may not be the best deal, but we have to revoke Article 50 because we are not going to be ready by the end of March. And Brexit was always going to take a long time. It was never going to be a short process. If we do leave at the end of March, it will still continue. It will not be over. We still have to negotiate something with the European Union. We can't just not import chicken from Holland or whatever. We need that stuff. So it's not going to be over, and we may as well revoke Article 50 now. Give us some time to find a deal that works for everyone, because we don't have a united country. And by leaving on the 29th of March, we're actually not healing the divide.
Well, let's bring in a lever on that. Josh, you're on the next table along. You supported leave, but you think that perhaps there is room for negotiation because you would like a Canada-style deal?
Yeah, so I'm in favour of a Canada plus. I'm quite disappointed that that we're having to would be put between a no deal or Theresa May's deal sort of premise here. However, I still think no deal is better than Theresa May's deal, because with the deal that we've got at the minute, is you've got a lot of uncertainty, and what causes things like the weakness in the pound, I think, is economic uncertainty. And I think that once we leave without a deal, when we negotiate future deals with other countries, they'll know what bargaining terms we're arguing with, and then you can have more solid deals.
OK, that's Josh's thought. Well, I'll come back to you in a moment. Anna, let's just bring you on that. Josh mentioned Canada plus. Very briefly, basically, what does that look like? What does it mean?
Well, it's what you might call a bog standard free trade agreement. So there's no single market, there's no customs union. Everyone means something different when they come to the pluses. The problem with Canada Plus is it doesn't resolve Ireland. That's to say, you'll need a special status for Northern Ireland to avoid a border in the Republic of Ireland. But can I just say that there's two different debates going on. One is about extending Article 50, the other is about revoking. And there's an irony here. We can revoke. The EU doesn't get to tell us. But actually, we need the unanimous agreement of the European Union to extend. And the European Union's attitude is not dissimilar to, I think it's Sarah, was it Sarah? Yes. Who was saying, look, they haven't agreed. The European Union will say, we will extend Article 50 for a reason, if you want to have a general election, if you want to have a referendum, but just for your Parliament to continue not deciding anything. I don't think we're going to get an extension for that.
OK. Jazz, you wanted to come in. What did you want to say?
I think, the idea that we can leave with no deal and that's somehow going to just end the debate and we'll never have to hear the word Brexit again is a fallacy. We will have to try and get some kind of deals in place, and that negotiation will continue. This will not be the end of it. And unfortunately, the people we speak to on the streets of Leeds, I mean, I campaign with Leeds for Europe, you know, that there is a misunderstanding. Some people think no deal means status quo. It doesn't. So we know we've got a lot of work to do as campaigners to say that actually that is not what it means at all. It's not. We're not just going to remain. That's not what no deal means. I think sometimes some of the figures and stats might be slightly skewed by what people actually understand no deal to mean. And, you know, revoke Article 50, I think, fantastic, because, you know, she's had 2.5 years as Mrs May to bring a negotiated decent deal to the table, and she's failed to do that. How many Brexit secretaries have we had, for goodness sake? You know, there's nothing going to change with, you know, she's not going to come back with anything meaningful tomorrow that Parliament will accept, given the scale of the defeat she had. That leaves only no deal on the table. And I think it's rather selfish to suggest that, you know, might want to have our, you know, happy to have your business, you know, disrupted. But how can we say that, you know, that every person out there is happy to have their business and their lives disrupted? You know, our expats, look how many people were disenfranchised. The sovereignty thing, if I may just address that issue there. Our Parliament is sovereign. They have proved that time and time again over the past couple of weeks. They've always been sovereign. The treaties that we adhere to cannot be amended without Parliament agreeing to that. So that there's a fallacy that we are not sovereign. We are sovereign. And actually, you know, the deal that we currently have as remaining in the EU, nothing that has been presented in the past 2.5 years, whether it's Canada plus, Norway plus, or whatever plus to infinity we can, you know, get to, because that's where it's seemingly heading. You know, we've had some absolute nonsense spoken by our political representatives on this, and I think David Lammy was absolutely right when he said, please, can we in Parliament stand up and be honest with our constituents and tell them the truth of what is going on here.
Now, you get a black mark, you mentioned a politician Not allowed, not allowed. Craig, you wanted to come in very quickly about the extension, about whether we should extend the chat.
The issue I feel is that it doesn't matter who went to Brussels. It'd be Jeremy Corbyn, Theresa May, the Liberal Democrats, the DUP. Nobody would have come back with a deal that suited
So you don't
everybody.
think a deal, an extending,
No.
would lead to any kind of achievable deal?
All it'll do, it'll just drive a bigger wedge.
Stephen, you were waving at me just a moment ago.
Yes, thank you. The last woman that spoke, and the Remainers on the platform, Annan himself, and almost the entire political class are doing exactly the same thing. They're talking about this situation as if it's a technical thing. This is a political situation. What they've tried to do in the 2.5 years since the Democratic majority of this country voted to leave, they can't change that vote. What they're trying to do is discredit it to the point that they dissolve it. We live in a democracy, and that democratic vote must be adhered to.
OK, we're nearly out of time on this part, so let's get your buzzers ready. Let's have our second vote of the night. From what you've heard this evening, using your handsets on your table, answer the following question. Should the UK delay leaving the EU? Please press 1 for yes, 2 for no. Coming up, we will bring you that result and that of our national poll. Stay tuned. Well, welcome back to the Pyramid Canteen at Leeds University Union, where we're discussing some of the thorniest issues surrounding the UK's departure from the EU. In a moment, we'll introduce our next topic for discussion, but first, the results of our audience and national poll. The question was, should we delay leaving the EU? Now, here in the studio, 46% of our audience said yes. 54% of those in this room said no. So as this is an audience of 50-50 leavers and remainers, it's interesting that they are still favouring not extending the deal. Now let's compare that with the results of a much larger national Sky Data poll, which was carried out on Friday, and the result of that was exactly 50-50. So nationally as divided as ever. Here in Leeds, it seems maybe it's just a northern thing. You know, you think there's just been too much talking and not enough doing. But yes, you don't think there's any point in continuing the talking. Right, let's get on to our third topic for the night. We're asking, should there be a final second referendum, the so-called people's vote, to settle this once and for all? I'm seeing lots of heads shaking. So let's have a chat with some of the people up here on the stage. Mary, let's bring you in as I fall over. What impact do you think a second referendum could have?
I think it could be even more divisive than the first one, because, like this gentleman over here said during the break, if the vote would have been Remain by such a slim majority, he would have accepted it. And I think you risk disengaging a large portion of the country that took part in this referendum, that have never engaged in politics before.
Sitting next to you, Carrie, what are your thoughts about a second referendum?
I think I agree with Mary to an extent, but sometimes people say it will undermine democratic process, but I think actually it will enhance our democratic process. But at the moment, we do have a society which is much more fractured than any one of us would like, and now what we need to do is really heal those wounds. And I have absolute confidence that I think with our shared values and our strong economy, we will come together. It's just we have to get through this phase, and we need to do it more amicably than perhaps at the moment we're doing, with more, much more divisive and much more. But
you're not worried that a second referendum would be more divisive?
I think, but a lot of people actually, we do say a lot of people voted to remain as well. And because we're not getting anywhere with the current deal, or perhaps it hasn't gone, to the extent as far as people thought it would go. And also, a lot of people, we actually do have a lot of people who voted to leave changed their mind. So you just don't know which way it's going to go. But at least we need to be perhaps more informed as to where we're going, because there was lots of misinformation and also lies at the time when people were asked to vote to leave.
Okay, we'll come back to some Remainers in a moment. But first, I want to talk to a Leaver who also thinks we should have a second referendum, and that's you, Johnny. So despite winning, why do you think a second referendum would be useful?
I don't actually think it would be useful in any way, because we spent such a long time deciding in the first place. I don't know who told you I'd like a second referendum. I think if we did...
a little Dickie Bird told me that you thought maybe a second referendum would be useful because then it would all be over with.
I think if we had a second referendum, I think actually the result would be Remain, because so many people are sick and tired of hearing about Brexit. People will probably think, right, well, if we just remain to it, it'll all be over. I don't think we need a second referendum. I think people make a good choice for a good argument for a second referendum. I heard someone say, always measure twice, cut once, which is a great argument. We spent so much time measuring the first time. Even if we had a second referendum, and if the vote was then Remain, well, which referendum should we honour?
Best of three.
Best of three, exactly. I mean, it's a complete joke. People want to see decisive action now. And before, there's been too many going for... It's too much of a mess. We need to pull in the direction of sorting this out now. And I think delaying the Article 50, delaying the leaving, it would be an absolute no-no. And I think a second referendum would be an absolute no-no as well.
OK. Paul, on the same table.
Yeah, I think a second referendum would be an insult to democracy. And also, as Anand said on Question Time the other night, it wouldn't actually fix or settle anything. If you had another Leave result, they'd have to accept that. There's nothing they could do about it. Anything else leaves everything in the air. For instance, we went into this referendum, they spent £9 million of taxpayers' money to send a pro-Remain leaflet around the country saying, This is your decision. We'll enact what you decide. So we all went into that in good faith. So that would be a massive attack on good faith. You couldn't go into a second referendum and have a Remain vote. I couldn't accept that. You know.
What about those who will argue that the country hasn't changed and that the point of a second referendum isn't to try and get a different result? The point is that we've had a result and the politicians just don't seem able to sort it out. So we're at this impasse that almost the power needs to be taken away from them again.
There's nothing for them to sort out. We've gave them a clear instruction, which is we want to leave the European Union. They have to stop quibbling and get on with that. It's kind of like taking the parents want to go out for a day in the country and the kids like, we don't want to do that. We've voted to leave, and the political class is like, oh, but we don't want to leave. And all they've done for 2.5 years is try and undermine that vote and try and overturn it.
Okay. Let's move down here. You've all got your hands up. Matt, to you first of all, what do you think about the idea of a second referendum?
I think this sort of narrative about democracy sort of being in turmoil and so you talked about it earlier about this being about democracy. I don't know why democracy ended in 2016. I don't know why. We vote on a new government every 5 years. We do that because the status changes, the nation changes, our opinions change, and we assess the economic and the current status, and we reassess it and we re-vote on it every 5 years for a general
But we have
election.
voted on after the referendum, haven't we? We voted for different political parties, and the British public, the majority of the British public voted for parties that supported leaving the EU.
My point being, we reassess our democratic process all the time. So we will re-vote because the situation has changed. It's been two and a bit years now. Younger people who couldn't vote at the time will now have their voice heard. And that's massively important because they're the people that are going to be the most affected by it.
Well, what about the older people who voted? They're still going to be around, aren't they, though? And it was a very largely, a lot of the people who voted to leave were of the older generation. They're not going to have changed their minds.
Well, firstly, I feel like some of them might have changed their minds, as lots of polls have been showing that actually people from all age ranges have been wanting a second referendum. But I think if Leavers are so confident that Leave is the way forward and the people still want it, then have a second referendum and you'll see that we'll vote Leave again, but we won't because Remain is what the population wants.
Naya, just a quick point from you before we leave this table.
Yeah.
Do you think we should have a second referendum?
Yeah, I absolutely think we should have a second referendum.
What was wrong with the first one?
Well, I think, first of all, the first referendum, the Leave campaign was completely based on immigration. There was fear-mongering, misinformation. We were told that money would go to the NHS. We know now that there's actually £4 billion in place for a no-deal Brexit. What about that money? I think that now people know the value of the EU. People value free movement, trade, and I think we need to give the public another go at another referendum. Yeah.
I'm going to move back up to the back of the room. Some people on this table haven't had a chance to talk yet. Becky, you're a data analyst. What do you think about the idea of a second referendum? We were misled, we weren't given the information that we should have had, and now people have had a chance to wake up and smell the coffee.
I think, frankly, the idea of a second referendum is simply dangerous to democracy. I think everyone knows when we voted back in 2016, we all saw the same ballot paper. There wasn't an asterisk at the bottom saying 2 years from now, there's going to be a second referendum. There was one vote, and we all knew at the time this was it. This was going to be the decision. This was going to determine whether we were going to stay in or whether we were going to come out. And I think what second referendum supporters need to acknowledge is there's just no way that a second referendum could be democratically valid, because there'd be millions and millions of Leave voters, such as myself, who wouldn't see it as valid and wouldn't participate in it. So there's just no way that could actually be a proper vote, and I think second referendum supporters just need to acknowledge that.
Quickly back to Esther for one more from up here.
I just want to say, the gentleman over there kept mentioning democracy. What is democracy without facts? The people didn't know everything that was going on.
But those on the other side of the argument would say those facts were there.
It was there.
It was up to you as a voter to go out and find out what it meant.
No, but if you're looking at it from the layman's perspective, who might not know how to do research, they don't know the facts. So if you keep capitalizing on democracy, now we do know the fact, now let's vote again. That's what we're saying. We're not saying the deal that it's on the table is that bad. We don't know the fact. So if you want to vote again, now we do. That is democracy. Democracy is knowing exactly what you're voting for and what the effect is going to be.
OK, very briefly, Adam, we've only got a few seconds.
I just find it ironic that people who are leaving are saying, we didn't know what was... Why are Remainers saying we don't know what's going to happen when we leave? At the same time, we're saying if we have the vote again, then it's going to be a Remain vote. It's an irony that we're using one argument to say, why are Remainers moaning about us going into disarray, but then we're trying to prejudge what would happen in the second referendum. There seems to be a double oxymoron there.
OK. And very quickly, before we do go to the vote, and a lot of speculation about whether we could have a second referendum. How quickly could we have one if the parliamentarians decided to?
Well, if the parliamentarians decided, it will take about 22, 23 weeks, so we need an extension to Article 50.
OK, so a good 6 months. OK, so let's have our third vote of the evening. It's going to take about 6 months, according to Anand. The question is, should the UK hold a second and final Brexit referendum? Press 1 for yes, 2 for no. You're watching a Sky News special programme, Brexit Crisis, Deal or No Deal. Coming next, we'll have the results of our audience's vote and also a national Sky data poll on the same question. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Hannah Stott with the latest showbiz news. A warning, some flash photography is coming up. Hollywood star Robert De Niro has visited the Incan ruins of Machu Picchu. The Oscar-winning actor was honoured as an illustrious guest by the mayor of the Machu Picchu district. De Niro was reportedly travelling with his son.
Oh yeah, very nice. Oh, it's great.
Do you like Huayna
I'm
Picchu?
going to Sungate next, late after lunch, and then I go to Machu Picchu Mountain.
A man has been sentenced to 20 years in prison for the fatal stabbing of actor Morgan Freeman's step-granddaughter in New York City. Prosecutors say 33-year-old Lamar Davenport stabbed his girlfriend Edina Hines multiple times while under the influence of alcohol and drugs in August 2015. Davenport issued an apology during his sentencing hearing, saying he doesn't remember what happened. And at the premiere for the second season of Star Trek Discovery, the cast have reflected on their childhood memories of the beloved franchise. They were on the red carpet for the latest incarnation of the show in New York.
It doesn't shock me because I've had some degree of that love since I was a little kid, and watching the original series after school, watching the original movies in the theater. So that's been a part of my experience. I mean, I don't have the deep knowledge of every little aspect that some of the super fans do, but it's been a part of my consciousness in my life for that long.
The gift that Gene Roddenberry gave us was the ability to visualize a more hopeful and inclusive future, and that's a gift, and I think that's why people continue to come back to Star Trek over and over again.
This could be the defining moment for multiple civilizations, millions of lives. The future may be determined by our actions, yours and mine.
We're really on the other side of the looking glass now, aren't we?
Welcome back to Leeds, where we're discussing the same questions that are paralysing MPs in Westminster. Tomorrow, Theresa May is going to be in the House of Commons trying to persuade MPs that she's got a plan for Brexit. In a few moments, we'll be introducing our final topic of discussion. But first, let's bring you the results of our latest audience and national poll. Well, here we asked the good people of Leeds, should the UK hold a second and final Brexit referendum? Here's what you guys said in the room. No, 58% of you don't think we should have a second referendum. 42%, of course, that means said yes here in the room. Let's compare that with the results of a much larger national Sky Data poll carried out on Friday. And the results are yes, 44%, no, 56%. So it seems that the lack of interest in a second referendum is echoed nationally, although you are a little bit stronger feeling here in the room tonight. Right, the final part of our programme, and we're interested to see if anyone has changed their mind since the referendum in June 2016. So in a few minutes we're going to be asking you if you think we were right or wrong to vote to leave the EU, and if you have changed. Let's start with Jazz again, very briefly. Jazz, do you still feel the same? Would you vote the same tomorrow as you voted back in 2016?
I would. I voted Remain last time. I'd vote Remain again. And, you know, as I said before about campaigning out on the streets of Leeds, it's not just Leeds. We've been into the hard leave areas of Barnsley, Wakefield, Morley, Bradford, you know, you name it. We've been out and about. And I think the poll result you've just shown doesn't reflect what people are saying to us. We've got evidence from people coming up and giving us clear indications that they would support a second referendum of people's vote. And it's about a final say. It's not about not respecting democracy. It's about people saying, do you know what, we do know more. And to say that we knew where we were going, there wasn't a single, nobody who was campaigning for Leave said that we would be going out on no deal.
We've covered that a bit earlier, so we'll move on. Jazz, thank you. Dan, we've not heard from you this evening. Have you changed your mind? Do you still feel as strongly that you would like to leave as you did then?
Absolutely. I feel even stronger today. And if we don't leave now, because what we're seeing is basically a conspiracy against democracy. Previously, it was covert. You know, the political class was saying, no, we respect the referendum. Both Labour and Conservatives said they respect the referendum. They didn't want to make it a campaign issue during the general election. Labour didn't really want to talk about it. But since then, Keir Starmer's come out and said, oh, I support a second referendum. He didn't say that during the general election, did he? You know? They're all coming out and saying, oh, we should really, you know, stay in the EU. It's just obvious. They're attempting to overturn the referendum. You know, the divide now is between people who believe in democracy and the political class who don't, basically.
You get a black mark for mentioning a politician's name as well. Let's move on. Peter, we haven't heard from you yet. Do you feel that your views have changed, or the views of anyone you know since the referendum?
Well, actually, I know a lot of Leavers. Most of my friends are Leavers, neighbours. I've never met a single one who's changed their mind in the slightest. And I voted Leave in 1975. I voted Leave again, and I've completely, totally, and absolutely determined to leave. And I will. No,
nothing would change your
nothing
mind.
will change my mind. And so, quite to the contrary, if there's another referendum, I will be out there as an activist. I've already started a Facebook page, Leavers of Leeds, to organise people in case there is another referendum, and I will be campaigning to leave.
What could Theresa May do to help Leave that you think would work?
Yeah, from now, we would have to just leave now. I think it was possible. I was quite willing to listen to a long, you know, to have a staged leave, because we're very entangled, to have a staged process, but she can't do that. She's proved herself incapable of doing that, and consequently, where we are now, the only thing to do now is just leave.
Leave. Okay.
Yeah.
There's lots of you who feel like that. Up here, we've not spoken to you in the corner. Becky, have you got any words of wisdom for Theresa May? Anything you think she could be doing that she's not doing?
No, I'm Remain. I would vote Remain again, but I do respect the Leave vote. I feel that I would just like to see politicians working together. I'd like to see them stop sniping, work towards a common goal. When it comes to the point where we leave, I would like the choice between no deal Brexit or a deal Brexit. But yeah, I would just like to see a general consensus and working towards a common purpose.
Playing a bit nicer than they have been. Yeah. Okay, we're going to get your final vote now of the evening on your touchpads. This is to ask you essentially, have you changed your mind really? Do you think the way you voted, do you think the country was right to leave the EU or wrong in 2016? Essentially, is Brexit a good idea? Press 1 if you think it is right. Press 2 if you think it is wrong. And we'll bring you that result in a very short time. Be interesting to see. We've got 50-50. One thing I was interested in terms of solutions, this audience here, we've talked about three things tonight. We've talked about no deal, we've talked about extending and talking more, and we've talked about second referendum. If you had to pick one, I'm going to ask you a show of hands, so we'll do it on the big camera. If you had to pick one, what would it be? So could you raise your hands if you think the best way forward now for the government is no deal, just out? Ooh. Wow, all of the levers. Okay, what about more talks, more compromise, possibly? Some Remainers? Okay, and what about the idea of a second referendum? That's the best idea? Less support for that in the room. Interesting, interesting. Very well done, all of you. Right, has anyone got any advice? Has anyone got any advice for Theresa May? Come on, come down here, Stephen, you've got a lot to say, but keep it polite.
I like the bullet because apparently the nation doesn't know what to do, the political class doesn't know what to do. And I will, and you'll probably say it's harping on again about the same thing. I think there's something in this country that can unite all of us under universal suffrage that affects Remainers, Leavers, abstentionists, all gender, all classes. Doesn't matter what you are. It must be that in this nation, the people decide. That should unite every single person.
So
if it doesn't unite people in this country, we need to ask what sort of country we're going to have. Are we going to have minority that wins? Are we going to have an elected unrepresentative clique in the Westminster bubble that decides? Are we going to have a panel of experts decide? That's what facing this country, and we must stick uncompromisingly to one thing.
Okay.
It must be popular sovereignty, majoritarian democracy. That should unite the entire nation.
Okay. Ian, you've not had your say yet. Have you got any words of wisdom for the politicians? What would you like them to do?
I'd say probably be more honest. I mean, the one thing that I think probably more than democracy would unite us all is that our politicians have been shambles over the last 2 years. I think if they could there's lots of talk about the national interest, but there's a lot of self-interest that's gone on as well. And I think if people could put it being a bit honest with the electorate about where they see things, that would be much better.
Okay, Matt. We haven't really heard from you. Any suggestions how we can fix it? Sorry, Chris.
I think the best time to prepare for a no deal was 2 years ago, but the second best time to prepare for a no deal was today. So if Theresa May is watching, start preparing for a no deal, because that's what's going to happen.
Just coming back to this table, Ian, quickly.
Yeah, I would just say that there are various flavours of coming out of the EU. And I think one of the things I would like to see Theresa May do is put together a cross-party team of people to look at the various options, the Canada plus plus, the Norway plus plus, coming out with no deal, so that everybody fully understands what all the options are. And that could then, once we know what these options are, that could actually be put back to the people so that they could vote.
So this sort of meaningful vote in Parliament that's being mooted. Sarah, very briefly.
What that gentleman's just said is quite a good idea, but it's something that should have been done 2 years ago. This is a bit like Christmas shopping on Christmas Eve now. We knew the day was coming and everyone's running around like headless chickens trying to sort it out. They should have started 2 years ago.
Good point. Meaningful vote. You've got hands up in the back. I mean, do you think that would be a useful idea?
I just want to say, I don't understand what is so bad about the EU. What have they done that's so bad? We are literally sat here saying, let's just leave them. Let's just go. Leave means leave. Most people who, well, many of my friends who voted leave didn't think that actually we were going to leave with no deal. We thought we were going to leave with some sort of deal. The EU are not working against us. I don't know why we have this mentality that the EU is some big evil corporation. We need to unite the country. Leaving with no deal does not unite.
Mary, we're running out of time.
Words of wisdom for Theresa May: resign.
Do you think, does anybody in the room think she's the best person, so put your hands down, does anyone think she's the best person to negotiate the deal going forward?
I think...
You do?
I don't think she's the best person, but she was put in that situation, and I think the amount of sexism that's taken place because she's a woman, and the fact that things like her type 1 diabetes have been brought up, as somebody who's one of my closest friends has that, I find it's disgusting some of the rhetoric that's been used against her. I do not agree with Theresa May in many of her ideas. However, had anyone else been in her position, they would have equally had the same amount of challenges.
I'm sure politicians on the other side will say something similar, but Adam, thank you very much. Right, we've got the results of your vote. Let's bring it to you. We asked you, do you think the country was right or wrong to vote to leave the EU in 2016? And the results in the room, 54% of you think it was right, that Brexit is a good idea. 45% of you think it was wrong. So pretty similar to how you felt when you came in. It doesn't look like anyone's minds have been changed in here. Let's compare that with the results of a much larger national Sky data poll carried out on Friday. The results are 49% of people think that it was right to vote for Brexit, compared to 51% who thought it was wrong. So it's the other way around nationally, almost the reverse of the Brexit vote as well, but by quite a small margin. Well, I'm afraid that brings us to the end of our special programme. It's roared by, hasn't it, a full hour of Brexit discussion without a single MP, although we did get a couple of name checks. We hope that you enjoyed the debate, and we hope that our leaders in Westminster have perhaps taken note of what some of these people have been saying. We heard a lot of straight talking, characteristic of this part of the country, and the votes among our audience appear to indicate that they'd like to get on with things and would leave without a deal. They're having none of it when it comes to a second referendum. Well, thank you all very much. Thank you guys for coming down here today. Thank you to the Pyramid Canteen at Leeds University Union for having us. Thanks for watching.
Jane, thanks very much indeed. You're watching Sky News. Do stay with us. Coming up at 8, we'll hear more from Leeds and Jane's political free discussion over Brexit, and more on the Plan B.
Where in the world does a country go back to their past to build their future? Where can 15 centuries of art be explored in a single day? And where can you catch your breath and have it taken away? Where do nature's hidden treasures come to life? Where can you feast your eyes and soul under